Hello everyone, welcome to Options with Doug, streaming live on Monday and Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Bookmap Discord and the Bookmap YouTube channel. Before I get started, I need to go through the disclosures. General disclosure, all Bookmap Limited materials, information, and presentations are for educational purposes only and should not be considered specific investment advice nor recommendations. Risk disclosure. Trading futures, equities, and options involves substantial risk of loss. It is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Here's my contact information. You can get in touch with me through Discord. My name on Discord is Doug P. Also in Bookmap Discord, there's an Options-Doug chat channel. You can post questions, comments, and content related to the topics of my presentation of the topics of the channel that I'll go through in just a moment. I'm also on X. My name there is @DougPless. Here are the key tenets to my approach to trading. This is the basis of my approach to trading. I believe that options trades and market maker hedging activity are key drivers of price in many stocks and futures. I think that certainly applies to the large cap tech stocks like the Magnificent Seven stocks, as well as the equity index futures like the S&P 500 or the Nasdaq 100. And for the S&P 500, SPX is the underlying index. SPY is the ETF version of that index. And the ES futures contract is a derivative of SPX. And when traders buy and sell puts and calls in SPX and SPY, market makers take the opposite side of those trades and they hedge their delta exposure with the ES futures. And for the Nasdaq 100, NDX is the underlying index. QQQ is the much more liquid ETF version of that index, and the NQ futures contract is a derivative of NDX. And just like the S&P 500, when traders buy and sell puts and calls in NDX and QQQ, market makers take the opposite side of those trades, and they hedge their delta exposure with NQ futures. So I focus on for the S&P 500, I focus on the SPX and SPY levels. And for NASDAQ, NQ, I focus on the NDX and QQQ levels. The focus of my presentation today and the focus of the Options-Doug chat channel is options order flow, the impact of options markets on stocks and futures, and the influence of market maker hedging flow on price action. I have a two-step process for trading. And the first is planning. I use positional analysis. I look at how traders and market makers are positioned in the options market and how those positions change from day to day to develop a thesis regarding the expected trading range and volatility for the day as well as the directional bias. And the second step in my process is execution. I look at real-time order flow in Bookmap and real-time market maker hedging flow in Spotgamma Hero to confirm my thesis. And for setups, and when I talk about setups today, I will be focusing on an underlying asset. Setups in that asset can be taken with futures contracts, shares of stock, or options, depending on the asset as well as the way you like to trade. Questions and comments are welcome, and I will be watching both the Options-Doug chat channel as well as the chat and YouTube for your questions and comments. Please feel free to post. I'll do my best to answer your questions. Here's my agenda for today, Wednesday, May 21st. First of all, I want to go over news items, economic data, events for today and the rest of the week. Then I'll go through my positional analysis. Then I'll review some setups from earlier today. Then I'll take a look at the live market. And when I get to the live market, if anyone has any stocks they want me to take a look at, please let me know and I'll be glad to do that. All right, let's get started with news items. I'm going to switch over to Bookmap here, take a look at the ES futures of Bookmap, and there have been some events today. I'll go from the morning to what just happened. First of all, this morning, today was VIX expiration at the cash open, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. There was an interesting reaction in the SPX options just seconds before the cash open, and I'll cover that in just a few minutes. All right, so that's VIX expiration. Then I did post this breaking news release, courtesy of Financial Juice. I posted that at Discord. This was just after 10 a.m. The EU prepares a trade proposal for the U.S. to clear momentum into talks. So that was 10 a.m. So let's zoom in. All right, so I was looking at data for ES from the open yesterday evening, and now let's move into the regular trading hours. So this is the reaction just before the cash open. Again, more about that in just a few minutes. As traders, there was a large block orders of calls in SPX and SPX, buying calls, selling puts, and that helped to drive price higher. Then some additional news came out at 10 a.m. Again, that was this EU announcement preparing trade proposal. And then this move lower. The only thing that financial juice was not working this afternoon. The only thing that I'm aware of is there's a 20-year bond auction, and that should have been around 1 p.m. So it looked like the ES might have been moving lower before then. Right, so that's, if anybody else is aware of any other news just before 1 p.m., please let me know. Again, I could not get any response from Financial Juice this afternoon. So the only thing that I'm aware of is the 20-year bond auction. All right, so just to wrap up the rest of the week, tomorrow, jobless claims, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time, 9:45 a.m. S&P Global PMI, then at 10 a.m. existing home sales, then on Friday at 10 a.m. new home sales. And note, Monday is a holiday. Monday is the Memorial Day holiday in the U.S., so there will be, the market's closed, no webinars, no Bookmap webinars, including mine on Monday. All right, so everybody, if I forget, have a great holiday weekend. All right, so that's what's going on in the S&P 500. VIX expiration, EU news, and then I guess, again, bond auction at 1 p.m. and driving the S&P 500 and everything else sharply lower. All right, let's move on to positional analysis now. I'm going to start again with the S&P 500. And let's take a step back. Let's take a look at a higher time frame before I focus more on the levels on the ES chart and Bookmap. So this is SPX, a 30-day, a 1-year chart. This is the gap up last week, breaking above the 5,700 level, which was about the April 2nd Liberation Day, gap day. And that was positive news about tariffs weekend before last. All right, so let's take a look now at a 30-day 1-hour chart so we can get a closer look at that more recent price action. All right, I've zoomed into this chart, so this is showing, it is a 1-hour chart, but it is less than 30 days. So there's that gap up last week. And then gap up, range expansion, consolidation, more expansion. And this started Thursday. Looks like this trend line here, I'm showing this kind of steady algorithmic buying. And that was especially prevalent on Friday and Monday. And then that disappeared yesterday and today. And now SPX making a series of lower highs after that buying algo apparently turned off Monday afternoon. All right, let's take a look at the levels on this chart. We'll start with the expected moves. Here's the weekly expected move, lower and upper weekly expected move. That's based on the options market, based on the closing price for SPX from last Friday. Those levels remain in place for the entire week. And note, SPX did break down below that level earlier today, now trading back above. And then the dashed blue lines are showing the lower and upper daily expected move, also based on the options market, based on the closing price for SPX from yesterday. And SPX did break down below that level and is still trading down below that level. And again, those are based on the options market, based on the closing price for SPX from yesterday. I do post those levels in Discord every day the evening before. All right, let's take a look at the Spotgamma levels on this chart. That's shown by the dark red lines here. These are based on gamma-weighted open interest. They're provided to Spotgamma subscribers. I'm going to point out the key daily levels. First of all, the put wall at 58.75. That's a strike with large net negative gamma that can be expected to act as support. And again, SPX did trade down below that level earlier today, now trading above. And above that level is the volatility trigger. That is Spotgamma's proprietary volatility and gamma flip level. Below that level, market makers' position on the gamma curve is negative. In a negative gamma environment, market makers have to trade with price to hedge their delta exposure. That tends to enhance or increase volatility. Above that level, market makers' position on the gamma curve is positive. In a positive gamma environment, market makers have to trade against price to hedge their delta exposure. That tends to subdue or decrease volatility. And that is based on Spotgamma's old, what they call a naive model that makes certain assumptions about market makers' position and traders' position. All right, so that is the volatility trigger, and then up above that is the 6,000 level. That is the call wall. That's a strike with largest net positive gamma that can be expected to act as resistance. That's also the absolute gamma strike, L1 there. That's a strike with largest absolute positive and negative gamma. So that's where most of the gamma-weighted open interest is concentrated, and obviously not in play for today. And note there were no shifts in levels for SPX, and for SPY, the volatility trigger shifted lower down to 590. That was a key level earlier today. And then the put wall shifted higher to 585. That's also been in play this afternoon. All right, let's wrap up our view of SPX with a 1-minute chart. So I'm showing data starting Is this any better? Can you hear me now? Can anybody hear me? All right, Dan says it's better in Discord now. What about YouTube? Can you hear me on YouTube? Could anybody in YouTube please let me know if you can hear me? All right. Sorry about that. Not sure what the problem is. Apparently, anyway, I reset my microphone. All right, so hopefully good to go now. All right, so I was pointing out SPX and SPY levels on this chart. SPX 5900 volatility trigger level, and then the 5875 put wall level. And there is an offset, a difference in price between ES and SPX. Today it's about 17 points. So I'm showing SPX 5900 at ES 5917. And then also I have SPY levels on this chart. There's the 585 put wall, the 595 absolute gamma strike volatility trigger. And I do post the index relationships that I'm using every day in Discord. So you can show these lines on your chart if you choose to do so. All right, so those are levels in play. We'll talk about setups in just a few minutes. Let's take a quick look at Nasdaq, then we'll wrap up our positional analysis. Here's Nasdaq, NQ futures of Bookmap. Cluster of levels right here in the middle. There was a lot of chop around that level, those levels this morning. All right, let's take a look at the underlying index charts real quick. Then we'll get back to Bookmap. First of all, QQQ. Levels in play. 515 level. Large gamma 4 level. Price did break down below that level. Volatility trigger at 518. There's that cluster of levels with a 0 gamma level and a combo level. And then above that at 520, a large gamma 2 level. Let's take a look at NDX. All right, so here are the levels that were lined up with that QQQ, actually right here. QQQ cluster of levels, that is the 21,325 absolute gamma strike call wall. And note NDX now trading down below its volatility trigger. All right, back to Bookmap. So in Bookmap again, I have QQQ and NDX levels on this chart. There's that cluster of levels with the NDX 325 absolute gamma strike call wall in the middle. Wayne asked, does Discord work only for Bookmap customers. Well, first of all, welcome Wayne. Glad you're here. Welcome Moo. Welcome Cajun Trader. Welcome RJ McFly. And welcome Wild Bill. Glad to see you. All right, so Wayne asked, does Discord work only for Bookmap customers? Well, Bookmap Discord, there are, I guess, hundreds or probably thousands of servers available on Discord. So Discord is I guess, a generic chat platform, I guess originally focused for gamers, but Bookmap Discord is available that you have to join Bookmap Discord specifically. But I have memberships with several different servers, organizations that all use Discord. So Bookmap, Spotgamma, and others. All right, so there's Nasdaq. I pointed out some of the key levels in play. I also have NQ levels on this chart. And here's the NQ lower daily expected move. Price did trade down below that. And then below that is the QQQ 515 large gamma 4 level. And again, I do post the index relationships that I'm using every day, so you can include those levels on your chart. So let's wrap up our positional analysis, then we'll talk about some setups and then get to the live market. All right, so very briefly, and this does not seem as relevant anymore, but I'll go over this just as a point of reference. Market makers' position on the gamma curve at the beginning of the day for the S&P 500, Nasdaq, Russell 2000. All these numbers were positive. This is based on Spotgamma's older naive assumption. So remember, based on that assumption, a positive gamma environment, market makers have to trade against price dash delta exposure. Now let's take a look at the trace model, which is based on Spotgamma's new model. And the rate shading indicates negative gamma. In negative gamma environment, again, we're looking for faster price action, wider trading range, faster moves, quicker moves. And that's exactly what happened this afternoon. And with that drop right around 1 p.m., that also was right at the Spotgamma implied one-day move high. Show them with that line right there. And SPX, this is SPX, the trace gamma heat map, dropped down to this, the top of this blue positive gamma, which acted as support. And also the Spotgamma implied one-day move low. Very interesting. Quick drop from the implied one-day move high down to the implied one-day move low. And the blue positive gamma support zone just below that. Very valuable information and trace today. All right, let's take a look now. Let's move on to, let's go back to that one more time. So in trace, also showing a very low stability index. Oops. Low stability index at 1%. So again, based on this, looking for the potential for a move that just like the move that just happened. Low stability index, bright red shading, negative gamma, as price drop quickly down to the blue positive gamma support area. All right, let's take a look at Hero now. Let's move on to execution, real time. So what this chart is showing is options trades and market maker hedging activity for the S&P 500 index components. That's SPX, SPY, XSP, and ES futures. All right, normally I'm just showing regular trading hours, and that's the case. Most options, almost all options, begin trading at the cash open at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, with the exception of SPX and ES. which again are part of the components of this S&P 500 index. All right, so I have intentionally left on extended trading hours to show this move. I'm going to zoom in so we can get a close look at this. And this most likely had something to do with VIX expiration. And John, welcome. Glad you're here. If you have any knowledge about this, let me know. But I'm guessing this move, I'm going to zoom in enough that you can see this. So this was like a straight line up, and it started at 929.55. So 5 seconds before the cash open. A large block order. They were buying calls and selling puts in SPX. Again, I'm speculating this had something to do with the VIX expiration at the open, but it was a very bullish opening drive, and that helped to drive ES higher. A little bit of a pullback, then right around 937, 940. They started buying calls and selling puts again. And just so everyone is aware, again, the vast majority of options begin trading at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time, cash open, with the exception of SPX and ES, which trade options before the cash open. And the volume typically before the cash open is insignificant compared to after the cash open. But I'm going to shift to SPX here so you can see that trade was in SPX primarily. All right, let's shift back now. Let's go to regular trading hours. So I'm going to turn off extended hours, go to the S&P 500. All right, so S&P 500. Big move up before the cash opened, 5 seconds. Then resumed. This peak pattern here marked that recent high. Then traders right around 1050 resumed taking positive delta positions. And again, another peak pattern marked the high there. And then finally this peak right here, right at 1250 was a very, very nice leading signal to look for a short right before that big drop. So if you were paying attention to that at 1250 and took a short, way to go. Let's take a look at puts and calls. So you can see it's been mostly call buyers driving price higher earlier. And then this call peak. Sorry about that. Auto zoom still a problem. Shifting over to equities, back to the index signal. Call peak just about 10 minutes before price dropped. And then bearish momentum after that, with both the call line and put line moving in the same direction. So the orange line is for calls. Rising orange line indicates traders are buying calls. Falling orange line indicates traders selling calls. And a falling blue line indicates traders are buying puts. So right now, traders are selling calls and buying puts, and that is bearish momentum. Market makers take the opposite side of those trades, and they have to hedge their delta exposure with ES futures. So they're selling ES futures to hedge their delta exposure. All right, let's zoom in to the open. Let's take a quick look at that, and then we'll get to the current market. All right, back to ES. We'll zoom in a bit. All right, so there's that move right at the cash open over on the left side of the screen. Aggressive buyers coming in, and this started right before 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Aggressive buyers come in, take price up to VWAP. Price pulls back to SPY 589, just a round number level, and then aggressive buyers start to come in, shown by the green volume dots. There's the news that came in about the EU tariff proposal just after 10 a.m. and a stop run. And then price reversed lower as options trades. That was the first peak pattern there. All right, so there's the bullish opening drive. Then again, what has turned out to be the trade of the day. All right, so after that, price found support right around the 5,900 level. And again, back to the 589 level, a SPY 589 level. Consolidation right around ES 5950. And then price started dropping lower before 1 a.m. 1 p.m. I'm sorry, 1 p.m. as traders started taking negative delta positions, and aggressive sellers come in, drop price all the way down to 58.50. All right, so there's SPY, bullish opening drive, chop, another leg higher, more chop, and then sharp drop lower. All right, let's take a look at Nasdaq. We'll take a look at a couple of stocks. Then we'll get to the live market. All right, here's Nasdaq. Similar price action. Price started moving higher just right before the cash open. Moved up, consolidation. There's the EU news just after 10 a.m. Found resistance at the QQQ 520 large gamma 2 level. Then again, the drop began before 1 p.m. Now, Nasdaq has found resistance at the NDX 240 volatility trigger level, and now trading back down below the lower daily expected move. All right, let's take a look at Hero. Let's take a look at Nasdaq. I'm going to shift back to the total signal. Go to Nasdaq. All right, so Nasdaq, there's often a little bit of, I guess, kind of wonkiness in the first few minutes. But if we remove that, starting about 9:40, we'll see that on some stocks. Nasdaq signal, this is the Nasdaq index signal showing options trades and market maker hedging activity for NDX and QQQ, the index components. There's that move up, consolidation, and then the next level up. So expansion, consolidation, expansion, then more consolidation. A couple of peak patterns indicating some exhaustion. And then there's that final peak before the sharp drop lower. And we can also look at the Mag 7 signal. What this is showing up is options trades, market maker hedging activity for the stocks known as the Magnificent Seven: Apple, Amazon, Google, Meta, Microsoft, NVIDIA, Tesla. And some of those stocks were doing well this morning. We'll take a look at those. So similar picture. Again, the move higher really began for these stocks about 9:40. And then there's that peak. All right, let's shift to puts and calls. Call peak. So the put line was pretty flat after about 10 a.m. Traders bought calls, continue to buy calls, and there's that peak. In this case for Mag 7 stocks, looks like the Nasdaq started to roll over before the call peak happened, and before traders started buying puts and selling calls, which they really continue to do so now. All right, so that's Nasdaq. Let's go back to the index signal, and providing a little bit more of a leading indicator here with this peak happening again right around 1250. So providing some lead into this drop lower. All right, let's take a look at some stocks, then we'll get to live market. First stock I want to take a look at is Apple. Zoom in a little bit, we'll take a look. So bullish opening drive, or kind of a delayed opening drive. And again, price started to move higher right around 940. That's when traders started buying calls, shown by the rising orange line. Also, it looks like a large block order, somebody selling puts. Institutional kickoff, and then price started to move higher. Apple broke above the 205 hedge wall. And then the call buyers finally took their foot off the gas right around 1 o'clock. So remember, the Mag 7 signal really began to move lower just a couple of minutes after the price started to move lower. So that's Apple. Let's take a look at Bookmap. Go to Apple. There's that bullish opening drive. And mixed picture here in the order flow. Green volume dots are showing market buy minus sell, more sellers. Volume dots showing market buy minus sell. Green volume dots indicating buyers. Magenta dots indicating more sellers. So kind of a mixed picture here. And absorption right at 207. And price started to move lower. And then finally the call buyers took their foot off the gas, and Apple dropped with everything else. All right, so there was Apple. Kind of a nice bullish opening drive. Next stock of the day, Google. Very bullish opening drive this morning. And unlike Apple, there were a lot of aggressive buyers coming in. You can see all the green volume dots. Also rising cumulative volume delta shown on the subchart. Let's see what options traders are doing at Google. Shift over to Google. You can see this is a kind of a classic bullish opening drive. Sharply rising call line. Traders buy calls. Market makers sell the calls. They have to buy stock to hedge their delta exposure. Flow alert comes in just after the open. Gets your attention, signals significant options activity, and price. The call buyers took their foot off the gas as Google approached the 170 call wall. Then they started buying calls again. Price broke above that level and is now consolidating, as the fuel that had driven price higher is now gone. So Google moved higher today, driven entirely by call buyers, and also aggressive buyers shown a Bookmap. All right, so that's Google. Next stock I want to take a look at is Meta. And there was also a bullish opening drive in Meta. In this case, driven by puts and calls. So quick move higher. Call buyers, put sellers take their foot off the gas. Price consolidates. Then they start buying calls and selling puts again. Price moves higher. and now starting to move lower with everything else. So big drop lower, consolidating. All right, so there's Meta. Let's take a look in Bookmap. And again, Google, definitely the stock of the day, of the stocks that I follow. So Meta, there were a lot of aggressive buyers at the open. You can see all the green volume dots, that consolidation. Then the next leg higher, grinding lower, and then the big drop, right back down close to the opening level, which here's the opening print. And then there was a move down to 630, and Meta did trade down to that level again. And you can see absorption at that level. All right, that's Meta. Next stock, Tesla. Tesla chop in the morning, then big drop down. It looks like Tesla didn't drop until after the news came out. Tesla often does this, makes a trend break. Aggressive sellers come in, and then price breaks sharply lower. And I've got a good example of that from yesterday. I did post this in Discord. Just a classic example of a call peak pattern, and also in the Bookmap Learning Center, Bruce recently posted a series on supply and demand setups. And he had one called a trend break accumulation, and the one that I saw yesterday looked like a trend break distribution. So I'll show that in just a minute. And this is somewhat similar. Let's see what options traders are doing. So let's go to Tesla. There's the first call peak. A little bit of a reversal lower. Then traders start selling puts and buying calls again. Price moves higher. And not a really prominent call peak, but you can see the sharp shift in call buying. Calls from buying to selling. So starting just after 1, traders were buying puts and selling calls. And Tesla moved lower. Let me show that setup from yesterday. So this is from yesterday afternoon. So there's the trend break. So as Tesla was moving up yesterday afternoon, note the liquidity at let me zoom in on this. Note the liquidity at the levels. These are limit sell orders in the order book. These are passive sellers. Tesla moved through that. 352, 353, 354, 354.50, and then absorption at the 355 level. And then price broke this trend line. Then the aggressive sellers come in, so passive sellers to aggressive sellers. That's shown by the magenta volume dots. And Tesla made a huge drop from 355 almost down to 340, down to 342. A primary price target was the 340 level. All right, so that's from yesterday. Let's see what options traders are doing. And there's that call peak pattern from yesterday. Traders were buying calls. They stopped buying calls, start selling calls, and then they started buying a few puts, and price moved lower. So call peak, bearish reversal pattern, And then also this setup, the reverse or inverse of Bruce's trend break accumulation pattern. I guess I would call this again a trend break distribution pattern. Moving up through passive sellers, and then the aggressive sellers come in. All right, so that is Tesla from yesterday. And then finally, let's take a look at Palantir, then we'll go to the live market. Palantir pretty much chopped, but there was, if I zoom in a bit, you can see the call peak pattern this morning. And then bearish momentum. Traders selling calls and buying puts. And then that reverses right around 1040. Price moves higher. Consolidation after that, then Palantir drop with everything else. So let's go take a look at Palantir, then we'll get back to the live market. Palantir. There's that call peak pattern. Reversal lower. Bearish momentum. Aggressive sellers start to come in, shown by the magenta volume dots. And then this is just an angry drop here. A lot of aggressive sellers. All right, any questions? Does anyone have any stocks they want me to take a look at? All right, if not, I'll get to the live market. So let's go back. Let's go back to the S&P 500. See what's happening. Let's zoom in. Current price action. Make the volume dots a little bit bigger. So we know that price dropped down to the SPX 5850 level. That's shown with this white line right here. You can see some aggressive buyers coming in. Also, the blue line here in the subchart is showing that large traders were buying that move down. They were buying weakness with iceberg orders they used to hide their size. Let's turn on the stops and icebergs on chart so we can see the specific events. It'll take that just a minute to load. So icebergs, again, buying on the way down. Let's see what options traders are doing. We'll go back to Hero. I'm going to go to the total signal, go back to the S&P 500 index signal. Zoom in on this. And I'm going to open another Hero tab here. And we'll go to the equity signal. Open full screen, zoom in. All right, so the equity signal continues to move lower. There was a little bit of a bump higher up until about 140. Then the equity signal continued to move lower. Back to the index signal. Same story, a little bit of a bump higher, then a move lower. All right, so right now, traders are taking negative delta options positions after this 10-minute move higher with aggressive buyers coming in. Again, large traders with iceberg orders helping to slow down that move. Then as price started to move higher, large traders again started selling with iceberg orders. Hero signal shifted lower. Aggressive sellers start to come in right at this That's the 5884 SPX 0 gamma level. Also note there were some large sellers right around that level. And now price moving back down toward the low of the day, 58.50. Let me turn on another indicator that we can take a look at. Let's go to Market Pulse. Turn that on. It'll take a moment for that to load too. So there have been multiple pullback entries for shorts. Oops. First, right around that 5,900 level and the SPX 5884 0 gamma level. Market Pulse price change still loading. Tone down the volume dots just a little bit. Also now the 5875 put wall acting as resistance. So I like to use the peaks in this Market Pulse price change. In this case, I would be looking for the bright green as areas to sell, or if price is moving really quickly, at least a peak in the Market Pulse price change to look for short entries. And these line up. Pretty well with ideal entry points, pullbacks for short. Let's zoom in just a little bit. All right, this is what I wanted to see. Note right here, price is moving slightly higher, where this Market Pulse price change indicator is making lower highs. I think this is a very good indication to look for a short. And again, right here at the 5875 put wall, excellent entry for a short. Market Pulse price change divergence. Very nice short setup there. Now it looks like some large traders are coming in, again with iceberg orders, buying. Turn down the volume dots just a little bit. All right, so it looks like there are some buyers shown on the heat map here. There were buyers at 58.75, then more buyers at 58.70. This is showing this iceberg on-chart indicator, showing that 600 contracts were executed in 2 executions. That lines up with this rising light blue line. So large traders with iceberg orders are front-running this liquidity at 58.70. That looks like right now in the order book there are 120 contracts, buy orders at 58.70. And so far, ES is making Pretty nice series of lower highs. Let's go back and check Hero. See what options traders are doing. All right, the index signal still moving lower. Let me get that out of the way. That's maybe setting up another short. Let's check the equity signal. Also moving lower. Looks like maybe also setting up a short. So let's watch Bookmap now. All right, so the large traders that were buying with iceberg orders, they're through now. Market pulse price change showing an extreme. Looks like there were some sell iceberg orders executed. 75 iceberg orders, sell iceberg orders executed, and also 68 buys. So pretty much negating. It's coming out slightly negative there. All right, so now some aggressive sellers coming in, maybe finding a resistance. Right around 58.85. Zoom in on this just a little bit. Slight divergence in market pulse price change. Let's zoom out, big picture look. So prices dropped pretty significantly. We'll see what traders want to do now. Price did break above that downtrend line. Let's check Hero, see what options traders are doing. All right, so the equity signal continues to move lower. Index signal pretty flat. Typically, the index signal is a little bit more noisy, and it helps to mark the turning points more clearly. And the equity signal is a little bit better at marking the overall trend. And it's showing still moving down. Index signal. Normally when I'm trading, I'm looking at 3 screens at the same time. I'm looking at Hero on one screen, Bookmap in my middle screen, and then trading platform on another screen. And then making decisions based on what I see in all 3 screens. And of course, I'm only presenting on one screen, so I can only show one screen at a time. All right, so market pulse price change, moving down. So we'll see if the SPY 585 put wall holds a support or price breaks down below that level again. So in the most recent test, it did act as support. Then broke down, now back above that level. All right, everyone, I'm going to have to wrap it up in just about a minute. If you have any questions, please let me know. Kind of last call for questions. Remember, next week, Monday is a holiday, so I will see you on Wednesday. All right, everyone, have a great afternoon. Thank you very much for watching. And I will have a great holiday weekend, and I will see you a week from today. All right, bye.